Hey guys, it's Byron here and welcome to Byron's Reviews. Today we are going to be taking a look at the newly released 2017 Power Rangers movie, directed by Dean Israelite. So, I hope you enjoy. First of all, I'd like to start by telling you some of my experiences with Power Rangers prior to seeing this new film adaptation. So, like many other people, I grew up watching Power Rangers as a kid. I'm mostly familiar with series like Power Rangers Ninja Storm, Dino Thunder, SPD and Mystic Force, and I never really saw a lot of the older ones such as Mighty Morphin, which this new film is based off. However, my older brother was an even bigger fan than I was, and he watched lots and lots of the older series, from Mighty Morphin, In Space and lots of others. So I think what I basically need to clear up for this review is that while I may have seen glimpses of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the original 3 series there, I'm not what you'd call a hardcore fan. So I may not know the ins and outs of everything in the Power Rangers universe. I just grew up watching episodes here and there, mostly some of the newer ones. So taking that into account, let's take a look at this movie from that perspective. So as you can probably guess, this movie is another one of those edgy live action reboots or newer versions of popular kids TV shows. Other examples of this include Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The movie follows a group of 5 teenagers going through normal teenager issues, such as becoming superheroes and fighting with alien villains. You know, standard stuff. The story is a very simple and generic zero-to-hero plot, with lots of character arcs involving teamwork. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Pretty much every Power Rangers series from what I've seen has had this in the show, and teamwork has always been a huge important theme, and here I'd say it works as well. This teamwork element never felt forced or childish, and it just came across as a really nice way to bond the characters and strengthen the relationships between the protagonists. Speaking of which, the protagonists were extremely likeable in my opinion, and I felt for them a whole lot and wanted to see them get through the struggles they went through in this movie. The acting was pretty good too. However, as is standard of these edgy remakes, there are lots of slightly darker themes in this movie you wouldn't normally expect from Power Rangers. Some of these involve crime, living with a mental illness, and coming to terms with your sexuality. While these did give the characters more depth, they did come across as extremely forced. It seemed like they were thrown in there just for the sake of making the film more edgy. I'd say you spend the vast majority of the film with these main characters, like the first 2/3 or so. And in those first 2/3, while you see lots of what these characters are doing, you still want to see more. There are still many holes left to be filled, and many elements that are just hinted and never really expanded upon fully. This did highlight a lot of pacing issues, and seeing as I did genuinely care for these characters, it was just frustrating that I couldn't hear more about them. But this was probably intentional, because nowadays you have to leave lots of elements out of a movie so more sequels can be made and you can build a franchise, because that's good, innit? I mentioned earlier that approximately the first 2/3 of the movie was pretty much spent solely with these main characters and not much else, and that brought about another problem. This is that the film really only started feeling like a Power Rangers movie to me in the final act, as they only really transformed into their Ranger suits and started fighting in Zords then. I think the film really walked a fine line between being a Power Rangers movie and then being another movie entirely, and sometimes I do think that is sadly moved more on the side of being another movie entirely. For instance, after coming out of the cinema seeing this movie with my brother, he, who is a huge Power Rangers nerd, even said that in a lot of the first 2/3 he forgot he was watching a Power Rangers movie. Also, for a lot of the movie I was listening to the soundtrack really hard, listening out for any motifs of the original Power Rangers theme tune, but I couldn't hear any. Having said that, you do hear the main theme at one point, but it's only for a few seconds and it's barely changed from the original version, and it kind of just seemed like it was thrown in there as an afterthought. I mean, it was a badass moment, don't get me wrong, but I would have loved to hear a really cool new orchestral version of the main Power Rangers theme, but we never really got that, and I kind of would have expected that from a movie adaptation of the show. In an ideal world, I would have liked for this movie to not be a Power Rangers movie, and for it to be the start of a new franchise entirely, but that had never happened, because if it wasn't a Power Rangers movie, this film wouldn't have got a budget or even got made, so it's understandable, I guess. And in terms of the overall tone of the movie, as you may be able to figure out from some of the things I mentioned earlier, it was a lot more serious than the goofy, cheesy TV show it's based off. For example, pretty much everything in the action sequences was CGI, and there wasn't really a trace of the cool practical effects Power Rangers fans would be used to from the show, and as a result it did lose a lot of its charm. But that's not to say that the CGI wasn't cool. It was extremely detailed, and the designs of some of the Ranger suits and some of the monsters were really awesome. But before you get me wrong, I don't want to hold the film losing a bit of its charm from the original TV show against it. This is because I don't think a film like Power Rangers or many of these other edgy remakes of kids shows should be seen as a replacement of the original or even a successor. I think it should merely be seen as a new, different, interesting way of seeing something you're used to. Because I think there is something cool about seeing these characters or a franchise you're used to seeing in a more cinematic, dramatic way. And on that level, I do think Power Rangers provides that. There is some goofiness and cheesiness left in this new film adaptation though, and that really shines through in the form of the villain Rita Repulsa. When she's on screen, she steals the show in my opinion. She has lots of really exaggerated lines, and her acting is so over the top, but in a great way. She's really fun to watch and quite evil too. So in conclusion, I may have criticised this film a lot in this review, but I do actually like it, quite a lot. While I would say that it is highly flawed in a lot of ways, I would also say that it is highly enjoyable, and in terms of the sheer fun factor, I'd say it's right up there. The action scenes provide many fun, memorable moments, and the main characters, due to the fact that they're so likeable, keep you engaged even in the parts where the film doesn't really feel like Power Rangers. My brother and I watched it in the cinema with grins on our faces pretty much throughout the whole film, and I think that both Power Rangers fans and people who are new to Power Rangers will have the same reaction, but only if they see it as not a successor or something that's supposed to replace the original show. And seeing it in that way, I'd say it's a fun popcorn flick, and I don't think any of the flaws I've mentioned detract from it being just a fun movie. So on that level, if you've seen the trailers and it looks like something you'll enjoy, I'd recommend seeing it. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've seen Power Rangers, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. I'd love to get a discussion going with you. But until next time, I will see you later. Bye.